Hello, everyone. This is Susan. Before I get started, I can the chat box whether or not you can hear me. So I'm going to enable the chat. Just type in if you can hear me or not. Please and thank you. Can you hear me? Just let me know. The chat box is located on the left-hand side of your screen. Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so for the portion of the chat, just because I won't be able to see it while I'm doing the presentation. So I'm going to disable the chat and then I'm going to re-enable it afterwards if you have any further follow-up questions to what I'm going to be answering in terms of your questions. So welcome everyone again. My name is Susan Walker. I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm the founder of the Naturalista Institute for Natural Hair Care and also the Earth Tones Naturals product line. And this is the Naturalista Hangout, which is a free hangout for everybody, where I tackle different topics related to hair care, overall health and wellness. And today I'm going to do a Q&A session. Some of you have submitted your questions, so thank you very much for submitting them. And I'm going to tackle a few topics today. If I don't get to your question, I do apologize. Q&A sessions will run monthly, so if I don't cover your question this month, then I will cover it on the next Q&A session next month. So just keep in mind, you can submit your questions, and I will do my best to answer. Got a limited out, and I usually try to answer questions in a lot of detail, so I'll only have time to really answer about 4 or 5 questions per hangout because I want to make sure that I give the attention and the detail to your questions as much as possible. So without further ado, let's just get into the Q&A session for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. You're going to see a little funky kind of thing happening here as I begin to share my screen here. Okay, everybody, so on today's Hangout, we're going to tackle a few different topics. We're going to talk about fighting frizz, your dew and dew points, hair steamers and conditioning, elaborating on and salt buildup. So one viewer wrote in and she said, I have fine 3B curly hair and I have a problem with frizz. I use products that help reduce frizz and they work, but they weigh my hair down and make it look wet. Do you have any recommendations or no solutions to this problem? Great question. So let's talk about this. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the science behind the frizz. Now, there are a few reasons for frizz. One of them is that it's just your hair texture. The wavier and curlier your hair is, the more likely it is to frizz. So type 4 hair is more likely to be frizzier than type 2 and 3 hair, and type 3 hair is more likelier to be frizzier than type 2 and type 1 hair. Your hair texture and curl pattern is genetically determined, so if you naturally have a hair type that frizzes, you'll need to work harder to reduce it. The second reason, so the hair's chemical structure makes it susceptible to changes in the amount of hydrogen present in the air, which is directly linked to humidity. Now, what you're seeing here on the screen is a diagram of the hair, and then basically we're kind of honing in and we're seeing in a little bit more detail the cortex of the hair. You've got the keratin chain, and then you've got something called a disulfide bridge, and weak links like saline and hydrogen. So what I want you to do is just kind of take a look at this diagram and just notice the keratin chain and those linkages, the disulfide bridge and the hydrogen, because I will be addressing those types of bonds a little bit later in the actual presentation. So most of the hair is made up of long keratin proteins, and they can be chemically bonded in two different ways. Molecules on neighboring keratin strands can form what's called a disulfide bond. And so this is a little bit of chemistry. So this is when two sulfur are bonded together. Now, what I want you to keep in mind is a disulfide bond is a strong bond. This is the type of bond that actually is broken when you're putting a texturizer or relaxer on the hair. Okay, so it is a strong bond, the disulfide bond. It's permanent and it's responsible for the hair's strength. And this type of bond is not affected by the amount of humidity in the air. But the other type of bonding between adjacent keratin proteins is something called a hydrogen bond. It is much weaker and temporary. So I want you to remember that a hydrogen bond is a weaker bond and it's temporary. Hydrogen bonds break and new ones form each time your hair gets wet and dries again. And this is why the definition you get from a twist out will pretty much stay that way until it's disrupted by dampness. So the hydrogen bonds in the hair allow you to style your hair the way you want it. It allows you to do the twist outs. It allows you to do the braid outs. It allows you to do the washing. It allows you to stop this till water or any type of humidity disrupts it. So those are the hydrogen bonds that are changing. Hydrogen bonds occur when molecules on neighboring keratin strands each form a weak attraction to the same water molecule, bonding the keratin proteins together. So that's a little bit of the science there. Now, humid air has more water vapor than dry hair, and a given strand can form much higher numbers of hydrogen bonds on a humid day. When a lot of bonds are formed between keratin proteins in a hair strand, it causes the hair to fold back on itself at the molecular level at a greater rate. So what does this all mean? It means that basically under humid conditions, aside from the fact that your hair might just genetically and inherently be frizzy, under humid conditions, our hair tends to be more prone to frizz. Textured hair or natural hair is more susceptible to absorbing water from the atmosphere because it's naturally more porous than straight hair. Once hair is exposed to high lift, and this contributes to the frizz. So the key to reducing frizz in any type of weather, whether it be hot, cold, warm, or cool, is to understand your hair type and texture, the environment you're in, and the products that you'll want to use. So the question was about 3B hair. So let's just talk about the characteristics of 3B hair. And this is compliments of naturallycurly.com. So in terms of 3B hair, the curls are typically well-defined. The appearance of the curls can range from ringlets to tight corkscrews. The circumference of the curls is similar to a Sharpie. The hair is typically not that shiny, and the texture can be coarse, or the hair strand can be thick. So these are characteristics of type 3B hair. So let's go a little bit deeper into the global texture typing system characteristics to talk about 3B hair. So the texture is the hair thick. The wave pattern when the hair is dry is a medium, kind of a loopy type of S curl. But when it's wet, it tends to be more wavy. The stylability and the manageability of this hair texture and type is low. Lots of body, lots of volume to this hair. The strength and elasticity tends to be high, and this hair type inherently tends to have a high tendency to frizz. In terms of its shine compared to type 1 hair, it tends to be dull. The moisture content is low, and then when it comes to the amount of oiliness or dryness of the scalp and hair, it tends to be somewhat dry. The porosity is high, and the surface smoothness is low. So what this all means together is that type 3B hair tends to be drier than type 2 and type 1 hair. It tends to have more volume. It tends to have a high elasticity, and the tendency to frizz tends to be higher compared to type 1 and 2. So this is just inherent in type 3B. So when it comes to frizz, there are two approaches that you can take. You can embrace the frizz or you can fight it. If you choose to counter frizziness, there are a number of products that you'll want in your arsenal. Now, what are some frizz fighting ingredients? Well, products to control frizz create a barrier to control the movement of moisture and keep it where it needs to be, either on the outside or the inside. So the first ingredient I'm going to talk about that's very good at fighting frizz is silicones. Now, silicones are a family of polymers originating in mineral quartz or silica. The addition of various groups results in a variety of silicones with different properties. Now, the information I'm giving you isn't to discuss whether or not you should use silicones in your hair care regimen. It's up to you to educate yourself about these ingredients and determine if they're right for you. And I think at some point in time, I'll do a hot topic on silicones just to kind of debunk some myths and give some real facts about silicones. A place for silicones in your regimen depending on what your hair care goals are. Now, the molecular structure of silicones gives them some really good qualities and properties for textured hair care. There are various types of silicones, and the properties vary depending on the type of silicone used in the specific formula of the product that you're using. Now, what are some of the characteristics of silicone? Well, they really spread evenly onto the surface of the hair, and they create lightweight films. They can reduce friction and tangling. They can make the hair look glossy and shiny. They can help soften the hair. They can help with color retention. They can enhance curl definition. And some types of silicones can help with damage repair, and they're really great for protecting the hair from heat damage. Silicones work by covering the hair in a waterproof coating, which does a few things. The first thing this coating does is it can help reduce the porosity of the hair. Now, this is important because remember, type 3 hair and onward tends to have high porosity compared to type 2 and type. But when you reduce the porosity of the hair, making it lower porosity, it makes it less likely to absorb humidity and moisture. The second thing the film does is it helps reduce moisture loss from the inside of the hair. Good thing or bad thing? I think it's a good thing, since what we want to do when it comes to hydrating the hair is try to keep as much water or moisture inside of the hair. The film also lubricates the surface of the hair so it feels smoother and easier to comb. Good or bad? Well, I would think it would be good, since we want to, in general, when it comes to textured hair, we want to make that combing process a lot easier. So the benefits don't sound so bad. So if you're attempting to reduce frizz, silicones may be an ingredient you might want to try. It's important to note that not all silicones are created equally, and you need to research and try various types and combinations to determine which ones will work best on your hair. Some silicones are heavy, so if you're a fine-haired curly with type 3B hair that can use products to weigh the hair down, you don't want to go with heavier silicones. You might want to go with the lighter weight ones. So others are lighter and flexible, offering various degrees of conditioning and detangling. Some really common silicones are cyclomethicone, dimethicone, and then there are newer silicones called raspberry dimethicone, which is a water-soluble silicone. The other two are oil-soluble, so they don't really mix with water and are not easily removed if you're just co-washing or conditioner washing the hair. But if you want a water-soluble one that can be removed by some really, really, really gentle cleansing agents, you might want to try the raspberry dimethicone. Okay, so most products contain cyclomethicone and dimethicone, just for your information. So other frizz-fighting ingredients are anti-humectants, and this is a group of ingredients. So humectants are used in hair and skincare products to promote the retention of moisture, which is a good thing. They have the ability to attract water from the atmosphere, and many different molecules have the ability to be really good humectants. How many water-loving sites they contain for hydrogen bonding with water molecules. That's just a little bit of the chemistry. Now, because of their water binding abilities, humectants are ideal for dry, thirsty hair. When it comes to high humidity conditions, such as warm or hot summer air, there can often be a lot of moisture in the air. Some moisture is good, a lot of moisture not so good. And if your hair is natural and it's dry, damaged, and overly porous, what can happen is your hair can absorb a lot of moisture from the air. This can lead to swelling of the hair shaft, lifting of the cuticle, tangling, and frizz. And I realize for most of us in North America at this point in time, especially if you're experiencing the winter, you're not really dealing with a lot of hot, dry air. However, some people might be, and so this would be for you. If you use a product that's high in humectants, especially glycerin, and you have a situation where a lot of water is attracted to the surface of the hair, what can happen is it can lead to hair that always feels wet, takes for a sticky, tangled, hot mess. So I like to call it cotton candy hair, which is not cool at all. So in order to minimize the entry of water into the hair, anti-humectants should be used. Now, according to curl chemist Tanya McKay, an ingredient is classified as an anti-humectant that does the following. The first thing it doesn't do is it doesn't attract water to itself. It must also repel water, so it prevents water or moisture from getting into the hair from a humid environment, and it should coat, flatten, and seal the cuticle. Now, when it comes to frizz-fighting ingredients or products, anti-humectants should be high up on the ingredient list of a frizz-fighting formula in order to effectively do the job. In many products, silicones are used to fulfill these requirements. Now, if you're looking for more natural ingredients, look no further than good old beeswax. You can also use hydrogenated castor oil, olive oil, and shea butter. Cheap and effective, but not so much on the natural side. Good old Blue Magic, Dax, Royal Crown. The choice is yours. Yes, petroleum-based products can be used if you'd like. They're extremely effective at locking in moisture into moisturized hair and repelling moisture from getting into hair when you don't want it to. So another ingredient to really help fight the frizz are these anti-humectant products. So other frizz-fighting ingredients are polymers. Now, if you want to style with staying power, let's say you want to do a wash and go, or you want really defined curls or a really defined style, and you want to fight the frizz, you need a product with hold. And the polymers in a product are what give the hold to a style. Polymers, especially film-forming polymers, are excellent at doing this. First of all, if you want super defined curls, you need to choose the correct type of product. And what do I mean? Well, when women are concerned about their hairstyles becoming frizzy, puffy, and they're usually using oils, leave-in conditioners, or butters to style their hair. This is the problem. Oh, sure, you'll have the moisture that you need, but you're not going to get the definition. And this is because oils, butters, and regular leave-in conditioners typically don't contain ingredients that give hold to styles. And the reality is that for women with some hair types and textures, you're not going to achieve any curl definition or longevity to a style without a product that gives hold. And you need clumping. So in order to achieve these two things, you'll need to use a gel, and more specifically, a product that contains polymers. Now, there are various types of polymers in hair and skincare. Types include conditioning polymers, something called viscosity modifying polymers, and film forming polymers. The ones we're concerned with for styling are called film forming polymers. Now, what are they? What exactly is a gel? Well, a gel consists of solid particles dispersed throughout a liquid. What happens is these particles form a network throughout the liquid that's the polymers are deposited on the surface of the hair, and what happens is it causes adjacent strands to be attracted to each other. So in other words, clumping, creating bonds between the hair strands. The more clumping you see happening, the better the final result's going to be. Now, the thing with polymers is that once the water in the product evaporates, the polymers dry to a clear film, you hope, which not only helps to maintain the curl, but adds shine. And this hold will typically last until the bonds are broken through combing, brushing, and touching the hair, or until the product is washed out. Now, I know that a lot of people sometimes experience a lot of flaking with gels. And this can be dependent on the formula of the gel. It can be dependent on your hair type. I mentioned previously in a previous webinar that if you have low porosity hair, your hair is more prone to buildup than higher porosity hair, just because of that really closed cuticle. Product tends to sit on the hair. So, and also it could be due to the formula. Some polymers are more prone to flaking than other polymers. In my opinion, there's nothing like a good hair gel for defining curls, giving them staying power, providing shine, and minimizing frizz. And you'll need to find the right type to really enhance your curls. Okay, so that's the key to really adding that curl definition in. You need to have a gel and a good gel. And what you see here on the screen is the Earth Tones Naturals Curl Define Curl Enhancing Jelly, which in my opinion is one of the best gels out there, especially for type 4 hair, to really fight frizz, define curls, moisturize the hair, and add shine to the hair. So a good gel is the key to helping your 3B hair stay as frizz-free as possible. Now, another thing that we want to keep in mind for frizz fighting is humectants. And I absolutely love humectants. They make my hair super soft and ultra moisturized. However, if I'm going for a sleek and defined, over super textured and funky look, I might need to minimize the use of them in hot weather. In cold, I need to kind of determine how I'm actually going to use the humectants. So I still use them. It's just that I use them with a moisturizer or with other products that are going to help seal in moisture. So there are several types of humectants that are found in skin and hair care products. A few examples include glycerin, something called propylene glycol, honey is a humectant, agave nectar, and agave nectar is found in Kinky Curly Curling Custard, panthenol, hydrolyzed silk protein, and fructose. So what's interesting about humectants is that each one has a different ability to bind water. Glycerin, sodium PCA, sodium lactate, and propylene glycol are humectants that have really strong water binding capabilities, while other humectants have less. So that's important to note, that not all humectants are created equally in terms of their ability to bind water. So glycerin, sodium PCA, sodium lactate, and propylene glycol tend to be really high up on that water binding list. Humectants are lower down. So when it comes to using humectants in different temperatures or different levels of humidity, it might be good to choose a humectant that doesn't have high water binding qualities, such as sorbitol or panthenol or silk protein or agave nectar, for example, in the wintertime and or the summertime. Now, I'll say it again, I have no problems using glycerin in the wintertime. I don't suffer from that hard, crunchy hair because I know how to use the product, and I pair it with a moisturizer that contains oils and butters that are going to help kind of seal in moisture and reduce the evaporation of water from my hair into the atmosphere. So you can still use them, you just kind of have to know how to use them. So hopefully that answers your question on how to fight the frizz. So you've got a combination of ingredients and products that you want to use. It's inherent in your hair texture. So in my opinion, I really believe that having a gel will really help you to really define your curls and reduce some of that frizz. So another question that I received is, another highly annoying frustration dew point. No matter how many weather reports, hair explanations, or cartoons I've seen on the explanation, I still feel that I can't wrap my brain around it. I get the general. If it's higher, then it feels more humid, and the best is in the medium range, and I could be overthinking it. However, I feel like I need a second grade science teacher to explain it. I get it. Dew points, if anyone has heard of dew points is something that some naturals use to determine the level of frizz their hair will experience. So let's just get into this. I won't get into the technicalities of it because to be quite honest, I don't understand all of it. I'm not a meteorologist. I don't dabble in that type of science, but I'm just going to go over the basics as I understand it, and I can explain it to you. So dew point is a tool that's used to assess the humidity in the air. And this is a complicated topic that's difficult to wrap your head around if you're not a meteorologist or a physicist. However, you don't have to be either one to get a basic understanding of how to determine how your hair will behave on a particular day. And something we can use is called the dew point. And the sciencey definition of the dew point is the temperature below which the water vapor in a volume of humid air at a constant barometric pressure will condense into liquid water. So essentially what the dew point is the saturation temperature for water in air. It's associated with the relative humidity. So a high relative humidity implies that the dew point is closer to the current air temperature, and a relative humidity of 100% indicates that the dew point is equal to the current temperature and that the air is maximally saturated with water. When the moisture content remains constant, the temperature increases and relative humidity decreases. I know, it's a bunch of, stuff that's very difficult to understand, even for myself. So let's break it down into what you really need to know simplistically. What you need to know is that the dew point is associated with relative humidity. The higher the dew point, the more moisture there is in the air. The lower the point, the less moisture there is in the air. And that's essentially what dew point is. It's just associated with the relative humidity. So to gauge how dew point makes you feel in general, dew points above 65 degrees Fahrenheit at about 18 degrees Celsius make it feel sticky and humid outside, while dew points less than 65 degrees Fahrenheit are more comfortable. The higher the dew point above 65 degrees Fahrenheit, the stickier it will feel outside. So what you're seeing on your screen is a chart, and it basically has the dew point, the corresponding relative humidity, and basically how you'll feel in a specific dew point. So over 26 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and if the relative humidity is 65% and higher, you'll typically feel very, things will feel very heavy. It's deadly for asthma-related illnesses when it comes to health. From 24 to 26 degrees Celsius, 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, it's extremely uncomfortable, fairly oppressive. And this is one of the reasons why in the summertime, they typically have alerts going on, weather alerts for people, just because the more humidity there is in the atmosphere, the heavier it is, the stickier it feels, the more uncomfortable it is for people, especially if they have particular health conditions, okay? So with respect to hair, knowing the dew point can really help you in managing your hair and style and determine whether or not you'll use humectants, and if so, how much. You can check the dew point of your location on various weather channels and online. So there's a dew point calculator if you're interested, and the site is www.dpcalc.org. Now, last week I was in Barbados, and what I did with my hair is I washed my hair, I conditioned it. I basically, instead of using a moisturizer, I just left a conditioner on my hair. And then I used my curl enhancing jelly on my hair before I left Toronto. And when I left Toronto, I got on that plane, my hair was soft, very soft, moisturized, but not ultra moisturized. As soon as, because of the amount of humidity in the atmosphere, my hair, it wasn't wet, but it was more moisturized. And the gel, the curl enhancing jelly, has a high amount of glycerin. So instantly I felt my hair a little bit sticky. It wasn't too sticky because I did not use too much of the gel. I was in Barbados for about 3 or 4 days. And the entire time I was there, I did not have to use any additional moisturizer, any water, nothing. Because of the gel and the amount of glycerin in the gel, my hair remained very, very, very moisturized the entire time. Now, there's a trade-off to really having ultra moisturized hair in a moisturized environment. You get some frizz. Your hair will lack a little bit of curl definition. And if you're using glycerin, then yes, it can get pretty sticky. So that was the trade-off that, that I experienced, and I knew that was going to happen. And it's basically a direct reflection of the product I was using at the time. So it just goes to show you that your hair responds to the amount of humidity or the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. It will determine whether or not you're dry or moist. And, in that type of environment, the dew point will tend to be pretty high just because of the amount of water in the atmosphere. So another question that I received, is it better to steam your hair with or without a plastic cap? And how do you restore or increase the elasticity in your hair? Great question. So let's talk about this. I don't own a steamer. I know quite a few people who do. I haven't invested in one yet. And I was thinking about getting one, but in terms of conditioning my hair, heating up my conditioner by using either a conditioning cap or I'm drawing a blank here at the name of the cap here, the one that you heat up, drawing a blank. That works well for me in terms of conditioning my hair. However, quite a few people own steamers, and just doing some research on it, it's not a bad product, but you need to be aware of a few things. There's very little research out there about the benefits of steaming including by the companies that make the steamers. Okay, so I think a lot of times when we're extrapolating the benefits of steaming, we're basically taking it from the benefits of steaming the skin. Okay, so all about steaming the hair. Steaming for under 30 minutes in general, it's generally safe, considered safe, in terms of not damaging the hair. So these are just some general statements about steaming. Steaming the hair is pretty similar to wetting the hair, meaning that the hair absorbs moisture and it swells, and it can feel smoother as a result of the swelling. Steaming the hair will allow the hair to stretch a little more than wetting the hair with the same force. So what this means is, typically, if your hair is dry, it doesn't have as much elasticity as when it's wet. Now, when you steam your hair has more stretch and elasticity than when it's actually wet, which is pretty interesting. Steamed hair will remain elastic provided you use reason force to remain under the steamer for 30 minutes. If you steam over 30 minutes, it can actually relax your hair, and I will get into how that works. Now, the source of this is JC of the Natural Haven. I love JC. She is a scientist, and she breaks hair care down to a science. So, you know, I really get a lot of information from her and other people that know way more than I do. And this is how I'm able to kind of research and give you an objective opinion about this stuff. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into steaming. So talking about steaming, let's go into elasticity. Elasticity describes how the hair responds when it stretches beyond its original length. Dry hair can stretch to approximately 1.2 to 1.3 times its original length and return back again. Wet hair can stretch 1.5 times its length, and curly hair can stretch more than straight hair. Now, one of the primary indicators of the health of your hair is its elasticity. Healthy hair has a high level of body bounce and curl formation. Elasticity makes it possible to style your hair, and it's also responsible for the hair's ability to retain curl. Now, a material is said to be elastic if it returns to its previous shape and size once the force that was applied has been removed. When it takes less stretch to stretch a material and the material is unable to return to its original size and shape when the force is removed, this is known technically as something called irreversible deformation, plastic deformation, or a permanent set. So all that means is when more force is needed to actually stretch the hair and that hair doesn't go back to its original shape, that is something called plastic deformation. Now, why is this important? Plastic deformation is particularly relevant to hair health and its appearance. If you're used to style or comb your hair, what can tend to happen is when the hair is pulled, it doesn't bounce back to its original shape. And this can negatively affect the hair's ability to hold a style, to retain curl, and it can result in frizzy hair that's shapeless. Now, one thing that you want to be aware of is that with wet hair, caution needs to be taken. Hair that's saturated with water is fragile and it can stretch much more easily than when it's dry. If it's not handled carefully, the elasticity could be permanently reduced and the hair could break. For this reason, it's important to use extreme care when you're handling and combing wet hair. And even more important is you should use a conditioner that helps protect wet hair from this plastic deformation by reducing the stress that's used on the hair during combing. Now, there are various factors that affect hair. Interior of the hair shaft, which is the cortex, is the portion of the hair structure that carries most of an applied load, and it continues most significantly to elasticity. Now, the cuticle is not so important when it comes to elasticity, but what it does is it basically guards the integrity of the cortex. Now, we spoke about hydrogen bonds a little bit earlier. They're the weak physical bonds, and these interactions are easily formed and broken. And it's important to note that the hydrogen bonds are responsible for a large portion of the hair's elastic behavior. Because of this, and this is something I want you to remember, it's very important that you maintain a proper amount of moisture inside of the hair shaft. Without inadequate hydration, the hydrogen bonding will be reduced, and this will negatively affect the elasticity of the hair. So very important that the hair stays moisturized in order to maintain the integrity of those hydrogen bonds. If not, the elasticity of the hair will be compromised. Salt bonds are weak bonds. We spoke about those earlier. They require the hair to be maintained at an optimum pH. The disulfide bonds are those stronger, more permanent bonds, and they also give the hair a high degree of elasticity. Now, all of these various types of bonds act to hold the hair strand in a particular configuration and allows the hair to stretch and snap back to its original shape. Another factor that influences the elasticity of the hair is the diameter or the thickness of the hair. So if hair is thinner or finer, it can't withstand the same forces as hair that's thicker in diameter. Thinner hair experiences more stress at the same amount of force. And this means that if you've got fine hair, you might have more trouble with your hair losing curl, not holding styles, developing frizz, and breakage. In general, African hair, especially African natural hair, typically has the smallest diameter, with Caucasian hair having the medium diameter and Asian hair having the thickest diameter. So now let's get back to steaming. Steaming allows the hair to stretch more than dry or wet. If you steam the hair for over 30 minutes, you can end up causing the permanent relaxation of the hair fiber, because what steaming will do is it will mess up those disulfide bonds, those permanent hair bonds in the cortex of the hair, leading to the relaxation of the hair. So steaming for over 30 minutes can actually end up reducing the curl pattern. Now, the other part to this question was, should you steam with a conditioner on? Well, steaming with a conditioner will be similar to warming up the conditioner and then putting on your hair, with the exception that the conditioner would be slightly diluted, which is not what you want, because when it comes to conditioning ingredients, you want certain ingredients to sit on the hair. You want other ingredients to penetrate into the hair as much as possible if they can penetrate. So what I would recommend is, if you're going to use a steamer with a conditioner, that you put a plastic cap on your hair, over your hair, and then go underneath the steamer. So basically what the steamer does is it acts like a heating element to basically heat up the conditioner on your hair, improve the adsorption and absorption of conditioning ingredients into the hair. If you're going to just steam your hair without conditioner, then you want to make sure that you don't do it for any longer than 30 minutes, unless you want your curl pattern to be relaxed. Okay, so that's the gist on steaming. So what are some strategies to improve elasticity? Well, you can implement the 7-day rehydration protocol. And what the 7-day rehydration protocol is a protocol that I developed to remoisturize your hair in 7 days. There is a webinar available, and I think what I will do is I'll probably redo that webinar again, and it goes through the entire complete science of how to hydrate your hair. Plus, there's a 7-day rehydration protocol. Plus, there is a Facebook group with that protocol with over 300 people that have actually participated in it. It's extremely effective, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'll probably talk about it after I talk about, I had a question about the max hydration method. So I think I'll topic Naturalista Hangout on the max hydration method, just talk about that method. And then afterwards, I'll talk about the 7-day rehydration protocol and, you know, how to moisturize natural hair. So extremely effective, very simple. It's not complicated, nor is it expensive, nor does it include 20 million steps. Very effective way to hydrate the hair in just 7 days. So we've learned that elasticity is heavily dependent upon 2 key factors: hydrogen bonding between water molecules and keratin strands, and disulfide bonds. So both of these are dependent on preserving the protein structure and hydration of the cortex. So the best approach to ensure excellent elasticity is to maintain an intact protein structure inside the cortex and an adequate level of hydration. Those are the 2 things that you want to work on when you're trying to improve elasticity. So you first of all implement the 7-day hydration protocol if you'd like. Now, in a perfect world, prevention of damage to the cortex structure is achieved by maintaining a perfect cuticle layer, avoiding using processes such as color, permanent waves, relaxers, minimizing UV exposure, limiting hydro fatigue or excessive exposure of your hair to water, and being very gentle with combing and styling. But we don't live in a perfect world. So most of us are going to experience various levels of damage to the protein structure and a reduction in elasticity. So in general, what you'd want to do is you want to minimize exposure to damaging processes, and you want to trim the hair frequently. I would say every 6 weeks or so. These help to reduce the damage. Other things that you can do are to reduce the chemical processes such as coloring, perming, and relaxing, reduce the use of heat, limit your exposure to UV rays by wearing hats outside in the summertime and the wintertime as well. You want to limit excessive exposure to water. So you might want to cut back on the frequency with which you wash your hair. So if you wash your hair every other day, you might want to make that, twice a week or once a week. Use low manipulation hair strategies where you're not constantly pulling on your hair all the time. Use a deep conditioning treatment weekly. And then you want to use regular protein treatments biweekly or monthly to improve the integrity of the protein structure. This approach of using the protein treatments is very useful for those who have damaged protein in the cuticle structure or within the actual hair shaft. Hydrolyzed proteins in protein products are in a form that's called the amino acid form. And what that means is that they're of a lower molecular rate. So they're really able to go underneath the cuticle and penetrate into the cortex. And they're usually retained there through subsequent washings, and they can contribute to the hair strength and integrity to some extent. Now, it's important to note that these ingredients will probably just temporarily patch up the hair rather than inserting themselves into the actual protein structure of the hair. But they're better than nothing in terms of helping with maintaining the integrity of the hair's protein structure. So another question that I have is, it's been known that salt breaks or cuts the hair. Growing up, to wash cause it to break or cut. And there was another part to the question. I think the person that asked the question is on the call, so I'm just on the webinar, so I'm just going to get them to clarify. It was something about having the salts in castor oil and some other ingredients, and I just want to clarify. So I'll address this first part of the question when it comes to salts. And probably what you're referring to is the mineral scale. And how do you know if you have mineral scale or hard water? Well, you'll have this type of look on the left-hand side on your shower heads, and in the toilet, you'll have this discoloration around the toilet. So let's talk about mineral scale and hard water. Hard water contains a lot of dissolved minerals such as calcium, iron, magnesium, and silicon. And these metals, what they do is they react with substances in soaps and shampoos, and they reduce the effectiveness of these ingredients. Not only this, but the accumulation of mineral substances will react with soaps and shampoos and form a salt that deposits onto the hair. What this means is that oils and dirt are more likely to build up. A film gradually develops on the surface of the hair, and that's basically what hard water is. It's mineral deposits in the water that interact with soap, and they basically cause a film on the hair. So moisturizers won't be able to penetrate this film, so the hair becomes dry, prone to tangles and breakage. The deposits can attract grease and dirt and result in hair that's dull, tangles easily, loses the ability to hold a curl, is susceptible to breakage, and is easily damaged. Now, there is a way to find out if there's hard water in your area. I think if you go on your particular municipality or government website, you'll be able to kind of put in your area and find out if there's hard water. So how do you deal with hard water? Well, it's important to prevent buildup in the first place by using a good water filter that removes the unwanted metal ions from the water. You can also use a chelating shampoo that contains molecules such as EDTA, that's the molecule that you're looking for, acetic acid and citric acid. These acids bind with the metals in the water you're washing your hair with and are rinsed away instead of being deposited on the surface of the hair. They are harsh shampoos, and they should always be followed up with a good deep conditioner to restore lost moisture and oils. Other ways to get rid of hard water buildup include vinegar rinses, and they might help loosen mineral scale so it can be rinsed. It can help dissolve some trapped organic substances and residue. You can also use clarifying shampoos, which may help by providing deep cleansing and removing any substances that might be adhering to the hair because of mineral scale. And then you can purchase a shower water filter to get rid of chlorine and other contaminants. So let's talk about the vinegar rinse for the purpose of removing hard water buildup on the hair. Vinegar may be useful as a rinse on the hair for several reasons. Acetic acid is a mild chelating agent, so it can be useful in removing mineral deposits on the hair that accumulate due to the impurities in the air and the hard water. The clarifying properties of apple cider vinegar and other vinegars also extend to the removal of sebum, the hair's natural oil, and the waxy buildup from products. When you're using a rinse for this purpose, you want to use about 25, you want to use more vinegar, about 25 to 50%. Rub it into the scalp and leave it on the hair for a few minutes, giving the product time to work. Vinegar can also be used as a pH adjuster for the hair when it's diluted with water and used as a rinse. Your hair needs to be the proper pH after cleansing and conditioning because it affects the overall health, appearance, and conditioning of the hair. Now, it's important to note that while many curlies use vinegar rinses, their usefulness is based on anecdotal reports for the most part. So there's not a lot of research about vinegar rinses. Research shows that there's very little change to the structure of the hair between a certain pH, a pH of 4 to 9. At both low and high pH levels, there are structures that and causes the hair to become more dense. This may be the result of an acid or base changing the actual protein. So not a lot of research behind it. A lot of naturals do use apple cider vinegar rinses and report that their hair feels great afterwards. I just often wonder if it's just the apple cider vinegar rinse or it's the other things that they're using that's part of the rinse process. But just keep that in mind. There's no firm research about it. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about what I just went over? You can just write it in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enable the Q&A and you can ask your questions there. Oh, by the way, I did receive a lot of questions regarding hair growth. Don't worry, I've heard you. I am not avoiding you. It deserves a separate webinar just because people had so many questions about it and I want to give it the attention it deserves. So I will be doing a webinar soon on hair growth, facts and fallacies, and debunking some myths regarding hair growth. So stay tuned for that one. So any questions, anybody? I've enabled the Q&A. It should be on your left-hand side. I'll just wait a couple more minutes. No questions? Wow, that means I probably did a good job in answering your questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. If you think of any questions after the fact, just shoot me an email, naturalistainstitute@gmail.com. Shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to answer the questions for you. And don't forget to tell any family members, friends about this. I'm going to post, send an email with the link to the replay in case you want to watch it again. Adventure. I want as many people on it as possible, just kind of getting educated on how to care for your natural hair. And also, sorry, I have questions. What Earth Tones Naturals product was for thinning, for hair thinning for flat irons? Hair thinning for flat irons. Erica, can you be a little bit more specific? And I'll get back to your question. With protein treatments, you mentioned hydrolyzed proteins. How would you compare the effectiveness of hydrolyzed proteins versus proteins in DIY homemade recipe for protein treatments? Excellent question. And usually when it comes to DIY protein treatments or mass, we're talking about mayonnaise, we're talking about egg. We might be using, some liquid amino acids from Bragg, for example. The thing about protein is that it is made up of individual constituent amino acids. So think of amino acids as a building, and they form a very large protein molecule. When it comes to any proteins or anything used for the hair, in order for it to have an effect, especially in the cortex of the hair, it has to be, first of all, small enough to get through the pores in the cuticle and small enough to actually get absorbed into the cortex of the hair and have a low molecular weight. Well, it just so happens that egg, for example, is a complete protein. It is all of the amino acids formed together to form this egg molecule. But it also happens to be too big to actually do anything in the cortex of the hair, which is really where you want it to act. So when it comes to protein treatments, you really do need hydrolyzed proteins. The hydrolyzation process breaks those proteins up into the smaller constituent amino acids, and they're typically of a low molecular weight, so they're able to get through the pores in the cuticle and really get absorbed into the cortex of the hair, which is where you want it to be to actually fortify the hair structure. So when it comes to the DIY masks, a lot of people use them and they find that it makes their hair feel great. Put it in form of film on the hair, but it's not doing the job of actually getting into the cortex of the hair to try to fortify that hair structure. You do need the hydrolyzed proteins. And hydrolyzed proteins are hydrolyzed silk protein, hydrolyzed keratin, hydrolyzed jojoba protein, hydrolyzed rice protein. Anything with hydrolyzed in front of it is going to be a protein molecule that's going to be small enough to actually go in and help to repair the hair. So hopefully that answers your question from Sandy. Thank you. How do you deal with multiple textures on your hair? So Alyssa, I'm just going to ask you to be a little bit more specific. Are you talking about in terms of curl definition, moisture? Just be a little bit more specific with that one, and I'll try my best to answer your question. If my hair is the same length after a year, should I be using protective hairstyles? Yes and no. If your hair is the same length after a year, what could be happening, and I'll get into more detail on the hair growth webinar, I promise, but what tends to be happening probably is that it is a little bit more than your hair growth. So it's not that your hair is not growing, it is growing, and you could have varying, your growth phase could be slower than somebody else, for example, and that's what's making it seem as though your lengths are not adding up. But it also could be that your ends, excuse me, your hair is breaking a little bit more than it's actually growing. So protective styling could definitely help you, or you might need to re-examine your hair care regimen in general to see if there's anything in there that's contributing to the hair breaking. Okay, so that's a really short answer to a question that I need a little bit more information for. But I will address hair growth and stuff and breakage and stuff like that on the hair care webinar. As my hair grows, my pattern loosens. How can I slow that down? So the curl pattern is an interesting thing. And I think, Makisha, I'm going to assume that you mean as your hair gets pattern seam. The thing is, and Tanya McKay did a really great, really scientific article about the science of the curl. And in that article, what she explained is that your curl pattern, or your curl, is actually, it doesn't really, it changes as your hair gets longer. Due to the fact that as your hair gets longer, it gets weighed down by gravity. And what can happen is if you had a tighter curl pattern when your hair was shorter, as your hair gets longer and is weighed down a little bit more, the amount of revolutions tends to change, and your hair looks different. And curly hair that was curly when it's shorter tends to look wavier. Basically, what's happening, Makisha, is that as your hair is getting longer, your curl pattern is really settling in, and it's tending to look a little bit looser because it's being weighed down. And what I tell people all the time, especially if they do a big chop, is that you're not really going to see a definitive curl pattern until what your curl pattern is going to be. Your hair gets short. It's a different curl pattern than when it's longer, just because of the longer length, if that makes sense. Client's hair is thinning because of excessive flat ironing. What Earth Tones Naturals product can help minimize the hair loss? What the client could do is try the restorative hair mask. the restorative hair mask contains a bunch of ingredients such as protein. It contains hydrolyzed protein, hydrolyzed jojoba protein, hydrolyzed rice protein, but it also contains some very special ingredients such as something called a rhodiola hair extract, which helps to increase the elasticity of the hair. So we talked about elasticity. So the rhodiola hair extract helps increase the elasticity of the hair. And it also contains the vital scalp and hair complex, which exfoliates the hair follicle and allows more growth. And so I had a client use it once a while ago, and she had bald patches on her head. And what was happening is, I think was sometimes because what happened is her hair would get very tight, her scalp would get very tight, and then her hair would fall out. So I took a look at her scalp, and there were follicles there. It wasn't like it was scalded, such as like when you have a burn or something like that, where pretty much the follicles might be damaged, there might be no hair growth. The follicles were there, and I said, I can't guarantee you anything, but you can try these products. So what I gave her was the shampoo. I gave her the peppermint oil, the hair and scalp oil, which has peppermint oil in it to really help bring circulation to the follicle, and a bunch of other oils. And I gave her the restorative hair mask. So within about 8 weeks, she reported growth after using that regimen. She reported growth where there was no growth before, no matter what she used. So the one product that I would try would be the restorative hair mask. And I would also maybe combine that with the scalp and hair oil just to increase circulation to the scalp. And also we want to take away the offending agent, which is basically the heat. So, take that away and start having her do a proper regimen with those two products, and just happens. That I'm avoiding relaxer. So Lois, what hair, can you tell me your curl type and texture? Are you a type 4? Are you type 3? Just for my information. And then what I would say too is that when it comes to combing your hair, you might want to use products with a lot of slip. So for example, conditioner. Never comb your hair dry, never comb your hair wet without anything on it. So a conditioner is probably a great thing to put on it, because what that is going to do is it's going to sit on top of your hair, and it's going to basically ease what are called wet combing forces. So what that means is it's going to take less force for the comb to move through your hair. It's also going to reduce tangling. So I would never comb your hair without putting a conditioner on it first. The other thing to do if you're having problems with combing your hair is to section your hair and comb those individual sections. The last thing I would do is maybe suggest what's called a tangle teaser. You can get them from Sally's, or you can get less expensive brushes from Dollarama here in Canada has the cheaper versions. Tangle teaser, it kind of looks like a bean, and it has short or small teeth on it. And what I find is that is excellent for detangling the hair, as long as you put sufficient conditioner on the hair. So you need to have a product with good slip on it before you start to comb or detangle your hair. Other than that, I don't recommend combing your hair unless you have something on it to reduce that tangling. After deep conditioning and rinsing it out with hard water, doesn't that defeat the purpose? So after deep conditioning and rinsing, yeah. And so that's why if you're having hard water damage, then what I do recommend is probably to get a filter on the shower head or whatever water that you're using to soften it, to remove those mineral deposits. Yes, Laverne, you're entirely right. It can defeat the purpose. So if we want to go the extra mile in terms of reducing that hard water buildup, you might want to invest in a filter. Or for the shower head, it really isn't as expensive as if you get a filter for your entire house. So just get one for your shower head. They can be like $25 or $26. You can purchase one, and it can probably do wonders for you. When applying the hair butter and jelly, should I also apply oil? Do I apply it one at a time? So if you are using a moisturizer, so if you're using the Curl Quench hair butter from the Earth Tones Naturals line and a gel on top, what you will do, I find you get the best results, especially and I'm speaking specifically about the winter time, because summertime is going to give you a different feel to your hair. So in the cooler or colder weather, apply the jelly on the hair, damp to wet. Okay, so you're going to towel blot the hair, section and apply. So if you want to know how to section and apply it to the hair, you can take a look at a video of how to apply. I can't remember the name of the video. It's on kids. So you can take a look at how to section off your hair and apply the product in order to saturate your hair with the moisturizer. Then you're going to apply the jelly on top. Okay, so that is you'll get the best results that way. You don't need to apply an oil because the butter already has oils in it. So if you are going to apply an oil, what you can do is apply it to your scalp only if you need to, but you don't need an additional oil on top. So just the butter underneath, the jelly on top. Okay, that's the best approach there. In terms of curl definition, certain parts of my hair are tighter while others are more loose. Yeah, and that definitely will happen. I've got the same thing with my hair. I've got a looser curl pattern in the front and a tighter curl pattern in the back. And honestly, you take a look at my hair, everyone, I just got to say, this is like, I don't know, day 8 or 9 hair with the curl enhancing jelly. I have not put anything else on my hair, not even a moisturizer. Yeah, you see some shrinkage because my hair is typically longer than this, but the curl definition is still there. So tighter in the sides. So did when my hair was a lot longer is I would style my hair differently depending on my looser curl pattern. So I would have less twists. I used to do twist outs a lot, so I'd have had less twists out in the back of my hair and more twists in the front because it's a looser curl pattern. So just knowing that, I just tried to style my hair differently to get my desired look. So Alyssa, it just depends on the type of look and type of style that you're trying to get from your hair, whether it's a wash and go or whether it's a twist out, and then you would just kind of style your hair accordingly. Unfortunately, with a wash and go, what you see is what you get with your hair. And this is why, for me, I like to go with twist outs or braid outs more because I could manufacture my curl pattern a little bit more. I would have more of a structured type of curl to my hair. Eventually, if I didn't retwist my hair, my curl pattern would take over. But for the times where I did retwist, I had that kind of structured look where I could kind of fabricate the curls that I wanted. So that's what I did. Yes, you're going to have different patterns. Kind of have to know how to style it properly to go along with that pattern. I'm protein sensitive too, so I can't use that much stuff, and I do have hard water. I don't do my hair every week, so I'm thinking I need to start washing and deep conditioning weekly. So the first question I would ask you is, how do you know that you're protein sensitive? And I just really want to know, because a lot of people think they're protein sensitive. Have you used protein in isolation, or do you use it in conjunction with other products or other ingredients? Because a lot of times when it comes to proteins in a formula, if it's not an outright protein, like protein treatment, the protein is typically usually closer to the bottom and you have way more ingredients up near the top. So how do you know for that particular product that you're using that you think you're sensitive to, it's not the other ingredients in there? So that would be the first question I would ask. You definitely do need to deep condition weekly if you are in cold weather. I definitely in cold, and if your hair is really damaged. And there's a few signs of damage. The high growth fatigue or loss of elasticity is one sign of damage. If your hair's heat damage, meaning it, let's say you've used heat on your hair and your curl pattern doesn't go back to what it should be, that's damage. If your hair feels very dry no matter what you do, it's probably damaged. I mean, to be fair, most of us have a certain level of damage to our hair just because it's of something called weathering. So the more you wash it, the more you comb it, the more you style it, the more damaged it will be. If you have any breakage, it's probably damaged. So those are, key signs of damage. If you have single strand knots, your hair is probably damaged. If you have mid shaft splits, it's probably damaged. If you have split ends, your hair is probably damaged. So in general, most of us do need to be deep conditioning the hair weekly, if not bi-weekly. I do it more in the wintertime and less in the summertime. So yeah, you probably should be deep conditioning. Really, you don't wash it because sometimes I just get caught up with being busy and life and running a business and my 2 daughters. So I tend to put myself last when it comes to washing my hair because I know I can rock a style for 2 or 3 weeks with the products that I use. So you don't necessarily need to shampoo it every single week, but you do need to focus a lot on it when you do shampoo, when you do wash your hair on wash day. So what I mean by that is do the deep conditioning treatments, do the coconut oil pre-shampoo treatment, which is a pre-poo, to help, you know, mineralize that hygo fatigue that can occur in the protein loss from the hair. Do your deep conditioning treatment. Do some TLC on your hair on wash day. And you are a type 4, Lois. Okay, thank you very much. And I'll just answer your question afterwards. Is pomade good for your hair? Please give me a little bit more information in terms of what pomade is. Is it a 100% oil product? It contains beeswax. Does it contain mineral oil? And then when you say good for your hair, are you talking about moisture? So just be a little bit more specific with that, and I will definitely try to answer your question. I can't handle coconut oil, jojoba oil, avocado, and other things. Okay, so those are oils. There's no protein in those products. Okay, so when you say you cannot handle those products, let me know what you mean by that. Okay, what happens to your hair? Be really specific. Be really specific. And I might have to do a one-on-one with you just to get a sense of what's happening. So just keep that in mind. I might have to email me a little bit later on. And you have low porosity hair too. Okay, all right. So Demi Moore, you're going to need to email me, naturalistainstitute@gmail.com, just to give me a little bit more information about your hair, and I can definitely help to guide you. The other thing I want you to keep in mind, everybody, is that I do natural hair consultations, even if you're not close to me. Natural hair consultations are very inexpensive. They're only $37. And basically what I do is I ask you a whole bunch of questions. I get to know your hair, what your current regimen is, and then from my assessment of your hair and all the questions that I ask you, I come up with a 4-week regimen for you. And what's included in that hair consultation is the follow-up regimen after the 4 weeks. So it's basically a one-on-one with me. Ask as many questions as you like with that hair consultation. It's only $37 if you feel that you need more information than what I'm providing right now, because I know that in the limited amount of time, I'm always going to have more and more questions. And I might have to do one-on-ones with people if you'd like, in order to really, really, really get to the nitty-gritty of what's happening with your hair. So I'll do my best. You can email me, but you might need a little bit more one-on-one attention. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so your hair turned dry and brittle. So I'm going to talk to you over email, because I would then ask you if you're using these oils in isolation or are you using them with conditioners. So this is now another conversation. Please feel free to email of everything, because oils don't moisturize your hair. Okay, so keep that in mind. Water moisturizes, and certain oils will penetrate into the cortex of the hair to help with the elasticity. Certain oils will seal in moisture, but they don't moisturize your hair. And I think that's the first thing that we need to address when it comes to your hair feeling dry and brittle, because all of those oils are very, very, very good oils. I know that everyone's hair is very individual, so what works for one person might not work for someone else, but you have to keep in mind that oils do not moisturize. They'll seal, they'll help increase the stylability and the elasticity of the hair, but you need water to moisturize, and you need water helpers to keep moisture in the hair. So we definitely have to talk about that. Okay. All right, just seeing here if I answered all the questions. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I think that I answered all the questions. Thank you. If I didn't, please email me, and just keep in mind you've got the hair consultation option, and I will be doing more growth than your hair, and you might not be achieving it and getting frustrated. So we'll talk about hair growth, and we'll talk about a whole bunch of other things as well. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Everyone have a great evening, and I will catch you on the next Hangout, which is next week. Thank you.